Good evening. Did you know that one of the chief culprits behind the destruction of rainforests in South America and Asia, something we're told will drastically affect global climate, is the government subsidization of corn-based ethanol, a biofuel that society is also being told it must have to prevent climate change? As American farmers minimize their production of soybean to grow corn and reap $5 billion in subsidies, farmers in South America and Asia destroy acres more of the rainforest in order to cash in on the displaced crops. This is one of the many quandaries of business going green, a popular decision process many of us will have to make in today's marketplace. However, global warming, a scientific theory, not a fact, is being exploited and should not be used as a basis for making business decisions. As I stated, global warming is not a scientific fact. It's a theory. There is a cyclical nature of weather. The biggest influence on the Earth's weather is the sun, which radiates large solar flare activity at regular intervals each decade. The Farmer's Almanac uses the cycles of the sun and the moon, as well as other natural variables, to predict the weather 18 months ahead of time and has maintained 80% accuracy since 1792. The world has actually been cooling recently as well, not warming. In 1988, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change devised what's now known as the hockey stick graph, which showed extreme temperature rises over the past 2 decades. But in actuality, we had only raised a degree. A Congress-initiated study by the National Center for Policy Analysis discovered the IPCC violated 60 of 127 forecasting violations in its predictions. The IPCC only clearly used 17 of those 127 principles in its predictions as well. That degree rise that we experienced over the past 20 years was actually obliterated this winter, and we are now back at 1988 temperatures. Record snowfalls this past winter in many areas across the United States and Canada broke records that were some 50 to 100 years old. Concord, New Hampshire received 100 inches of snow, besting their 1886 record by 22 inches. By the end of March, Ottawa, Canada had received 14 feet of snow. There was one man in Ottawa that actually built an 18-foot wall next to his driveway, and other citizens experienced what they started calling snow rage. As they ran out of places to shovel snow, they actually started shoveling into their neighbors' yards, which sparked a number of different fights. According to the Canadian Ice Service, Arctic ice is actually 10 to 20 centimeters thicker this year than at the same time last year, so the ice caps aren't melting, they're actually growing. In world weather, Baghdad, Iraq received its first ever recording of snowfall on January 11th, which prompted many around the area to believe that it's been approximately 100 years since the last snowfall, but nobody is around that actually remembers it. Global warming is just another false alarm. We were actually warned of global cooling in the 1970s. An April 1975 article in Newsweek called The Cooling World estimated that the cooling trend would continue through the rest of the century, bringing with it droughts, floods, and long freezes, which of course never happened. Climatologists at the time actually suggested coating the ice caps with black soot in order to promote warming. Imagine somebody suggesting that nowadays. Other alarms around that time frame haven't come to fruition either. The 1967 book Famine 1975 predicted, by 1975, a disaster of unprecedented magnitude will face the world. Famines will ravage the undeveloped nations. This is the greatest problem facing mankind. Entomologist Paul Ehrlich has alarmed us on more than one occasion. His 1968 book, The Population Bomb, insisted that in the 1970s hundreds of millions of people would starve to death without population control. A year later he predicted that by 1980, all important animal life in the world's oceans would be wiped out. Hundreds of thousands of people would choke to death from air pollution, and life expectancy in the U.S. would fall to 42 years. None of these, of course, ever happened. What about Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth? Well, in a lawsuit against the film, a British court discovered 11 inaccuracies. It now mandates that schools in the UK present the film as a political work that only covers one side of the argument and reveals to the students what the inaccuracies are. A few of those include polar bears that were claimed to have drowned from melting ice caps actually died in a violent storm. The suggestion that sea levels will rise by 7 meters in the immediate future is false, since the scientific evidence shows only a 40-centimeter increase in the next 100 years. Also, the claim that the Antarctic ice covering is decreasing is completely false. It's increasing. This documentary also misled viewers about Antarctica by using computer-generated video clips from the movie The Day After Tomorrow to depict the disappearance of ice shelves. While Mr. Gore tried to show concern for the planet, he actually has a $30,000 a year utility bill and recently admitted that he is set up to gain financially from the carbon credit industry, which we're going to cover next. The theory of global warming is being used to promote the new billion-dollar carbon credit industry. Carbon credits are a bit confusing, so I'll try to explain. A carbon credit is created when 1 ton of carbon dioxide is prevented from entering the atmosphere. Companies that are able to claim a credit can cash into other companies like EcoSecurities for about $4 per credit. Foreign banks will then buy these credits from the companies like EcoSecurities for about $18 per credit, hoping their value will rise, or European power companies will buy these credits to meet their regulatory needs. If they're unable to siphon off enough carbon dioxide as a power plant, they can just buy their way into meeting these standards. Carbon finance is a self-creating billion-dollar industry. For example, Chinese companies that create HFC-23 refrigerant gas, which is a gas that traps heat, claim about 11,700 carbon credits for creating a gas that they've been selling for years. Now they've invested $150 million in creating the product, and they've made back $6 billion in carbon credits. Some have gone as far to point out that, and I'll quote, Chinese refrigerant companies have become carbon credit factories that only incidentally sell refrigerants. Carbon credits only have a value because we give it one, but they're being bought and sold like gold. This is an obscene amount of money being made, not from a product, but from the prevention of making a colorless, odorless product that plant life around the world naturally absorbs and turns into oxygen. China, by the way, is projected to surpass the United States as the global leader in carbon emissions by 2009. What we've seen here today is that the theory of global warming is not occurring. We've been given a false alarm, scare tactics generated by people with a financial interest in the situation, and we've seen the billions of dollars that are being made through these scare tactics in the non-entity of a product. Don't get me wrong, I don't believe we should purposely pollute the planet, and I do believe in recycling. However, the reasoning behind going green is a myth and should not be the basis for making business decisions. Thank you.